Hello and welcome to Dubai Real Estate Unplugged, brought to you by the team here at Haus. Once again, I'm Luke Remington, Managing Director for the Haus Group, and today we're aiming to give you a good roundup of what's been happening in the world of off-plan during the first half of 2023. Of course, I can only do that by consulting some experts, and I'm, very happy to be joined by Paul and Rennie today. Paul, you're a regular on the Dubai Real Estate Unplugged. We've had a few conversations, actually. We had one a couple of days ago.
Yeah, we did, yes.
Nice to have you back.
Thank you.
Rennie, you're a bit new. Tell us a bit about yourself.
I've been with the Haus Group now since February 2019. I'm Rennie Senga. I work with the off-plan team. I hail from London. I've been doing I've been in real estate for just over 14 years now, serving the East London market for the last decade, and then joined here in 2019 with the fantastic group that's Haus.
Guys, off-plan is fitting, actually, that we're speaking to off-plan before we're speaking to residential. But for anyone considering, I suppose buying in property in Dubai at the moment, off-plan seems to be a hot topic, and it has been for the last couple of years. What are we seeing at the moment, Paul? We're talking about 2023. What are we seeing for the first half of this year? At the moment, for quarter two, I believe we've seen more off-plan transactions than resi homes. Now, when we're talking about that, are we saying that this is all investor driven because these investors are buying off-plan, or are we seeing end users buying off-plan to move into in the next 2-3 years when they're handing over?
It's a mixture. So going to the beginning of this year, certainly the first 2 months, I think our resales department had record figures, mainly because that was people committing to, I'm assuming over like the Christmas break, the New Year break, they thought, right, I do want to move to Dubai and we do want to buy a home. So that was very strong. Traditionally with investors, they tend to look at the market in January to see if there's anything they've missed or confirmation that the market's going to continue remain strong. They seem to do the same in September, and so very very end user driven the first quarter, but certainly from sort of February, March onwards, the investors have come back. They have a lot of faith and belief in Dubai. They still see the prices as very reasonable because they are still, apart from the Palm and Dubai Hills, cheaper than 2014, and it's a very bullish real estate market. And as we know, around the rest of the world, they're struggling, so it's making Dubai even more attractive.
So interesting, you talk about 2014 there, Rennie. With Paul saying we're cheaper than we were in 2014. Yeah, I'm sure both of you are probably hearing from clients, whether they're end users or investors, well, have I missed the boat? And they're getting all these publications that are saying the top 10 places in the world, and you've seen Dubai shoot up price per square foot. But have they missed the bubble? Or by the sounds of it from Paul, we haven't, because we're still cheaper than 2014.
And I would agree. I think you'd be very far-fetched to find another place almost around the world where you can have an opportunity to buy something that is cheaper today than it was perhaps 10 years ago. Yeah. And, you do perhaps need to look at that on a price per square foot basis. I think what a lot of people tend to kind of maybe struggle to get their head around here is just what's happened between 2020 and today. And I think you got to look at everything at face value. And obviously 2020, I think we labeled as the year of COVID. So you kind of got to take a look at that as an anomaly. And then from there on, when we see these massive price increases, where are we comparing it to? Where is your reference point? I was speaking to some fellow the other day, and he was saying it's a lot higher since 2019. And even then, the real estate market was perhaps already on a 4 or 5 year decline at that point. Yeah. Not necessarily what the value of the actual asset was, perhaps depreciated at that point. So it depends when you zoom out from. I think if you look at a graph, and as we often do, and scale back 2014 and actually look at what's actually happened, I would still very much argue that the prices are maybe in inverted commas cheap.
Yeah.
I say?
Do you ever get? It's really interesting that you say, where else in the world could you potentially go today and buy a property that would be cheaper than 2014? So what we're saying is in Dubai, you can. Isn't that concerning?
I don't think so. I mean, certainly, I experienced the madness of the second half of 2007 and 2008, when it was 70% speculator driven. That wasn't people buying homes to live in. That was, I was one of them. Everyone seemed to be doing it at the time, where, you'd buy somewhere in January to hopefully sell in March or April, having only put down 5 or 10%.
Yeah.
If it goes up in price by 5 or 10%, you've effectively, you can make 50%, 100% ROI, which sounds fantastical, but that was happening. The market is just so different now. When it's end user driven, which it is. I mean, I think last year it was 60 to 65% end users. I think it's about parity now, 50-50 off plan, 50% residential end user market. I just think Dubai, it was a brand new market just 20 years ago. Now it has at least got 20-year history. And when you look at Dubai now compared to any other time in the past, it's the strongest it's ever been, and it offers more than what it ever has done before, whether that's business, whether that's education, whether that's raising a family, whether that's wanting to work here remotely. There's so many options and so many reasons why Dubai is a good place to be. You're not paying tax either. Yeah. That those are the things that have got to be considered. And when you look at it now, Dubai is very strong, and it's going to continue that way.
You're speaking to investors day in, day out. If I was going to be buying a property today, would you be giving me the sales pitch that in 10 years it's going to be cheaper than it is today? Or which I doubt, you're going to be telling me that it's going to be worth double or what have you?
I think we've got to take a look at everything at face value, right? I mean, look, you are buying something today that perhaps is cheaper than what it was 10 years ago. And to Paul's point, the economy and Dubai as a whole has grown so much over the last decade, in terms of now it's probably the easiest ever been to get a visa, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, they're pretty much giving them away. It's harder to not get a visa in today's market. So
we were talking about that the other day.
Right? So then if
arms are open and come and join us.
Well, this is it. So then that means, they're very much welcoming people, which naturally is going to mean that the population is going to naturally grow. So I do definitely think there's an argument for, as long as you buy wisely and in inverted commas, and you buy the right sort of thing, your asset should increase in value. I wouldn't necessarily say it's going to double, because I wouldn't make such a bold statement, but I think the value is there so long as you're ready to accept it and look at the bigger picture and understand that value. And I think that's where perhaps people are maybe not quite understanding the value, because they've not traced back to see where we've been, how Dubai economy has grown in all the different sectors that it kind of dabbles in. And I think that's the growth.
Yeah. I'm interested, if I was looking to buy, Paul, today, the clients that you're speaking to, they've obviously got a budget because they've obviously got a certain amount in the bank, but do they come with open arms to you for you to guide them? Or are they saying, I want to be in this specific location? Or are they coming to you saying, Paul, you tell me what you think is the best options out there today for my money?
It's a complete mixture. You'll get investors or buyers who are convinced that a particular area is the place to invest. They've maybe done their own research, or they've been told by friends, this is the area, this is where we see the most growth. Or you get other investors who say, we've got 10 million dirhams, we've got 50 million dirhams, we want to invest into Dubai, and we want your advice as to where to put that money. So you're always going to get that. You're always going to get people who purely going to be led, and hopefully they have looked into you, they trust you, they've done their due diligence on us as a company to know that we are going to give good advice. And then you get someone who would want a specific area, and then it's our job to say, right, you want this specific area, whether it's downtown, whether it's the marina, whether it's the Palm, we will now go out and find you the best property at the best price in that particular area. It's a complete mixture.
Do you think all brokers do this?
No.
I'd agree.
They don't?
You probably find it difficult to find a handful of brokers that have the same sort of code of practice to be able to give impartial advice. And I mean, I'm sure I can speak on behalf of Paul as well. The amount of times I've probably guided people to actually just literally keep the money in the bank rather than buying certain investments that they've been proposed, as it's just a terrible option.
Yeah. No, interesting. Apartments seem to be taking the lion's share of the off-plan sales that's taking place. Why is that?
I think that when you look at the absolute prime areas, you know, we're great believers in the Burj Khalifa district, which is, you know, it's DIFC, downtown and Business Bay combined. You know, first of all, they haven't got room to put in a villa or a townhouse complex, and they wouldn't have, you know, the parks and the greenery. It would be impossible to do in those areas, but they are prime locations. So if you want a prime location, like in central London, most people can't afford a big 5-story townhouse in central London or a big detached house. But they can afford a flat, as they call them in London, or an apartment. So that's going to be, you know, what they can afford. So whereas, you know, when you go out of Dubai, and we're not talking a long way, we're talking 15, 20 minutes, you've got the villa and townhouse complexes where they have got the space for the parks, for the recreational, you know, the running tracks, paddle tennis. So those particular areas are obviously more designed for families, and usually the ticket price is going to be higher. But I mean, there's, you know, apartments in prime locations and family communities seem to be the main drivers for what's going on at the moment.
Do you find that you've got more call for people saying, I want that kind of, I don't know what you called it, with Burj Khalifa district, or what did you...
It's definitely one of the most sought after areas, right? Okay. Burj Khalifa district going on what
CBD as well. I think
Central Business District, which I think we've dubbed
Paul's claim to fame.
Wasn't it? I think so. That's right. So I think that areas, a lot of people would tend to kind of flock to that area, right? I mean,
why would they tend to flock to that area?
I think people feel protected by, you know, a prime location. You know, all over the world you hear location. So I think similarly, Paul mentioned kind of central London. You know, you might, whether that's Mayfair, whether that's Canary Wharf, whatever you make as like a almost landmark, and there's no greater landmark in Dubai than perhaps the world's tallest tower in being Burj Khalifa. So I think if you're perhaps not so familiar with Dubai, or, I mean, we talk about it all the time, right? Whenever we say how far is one community over the other, I think the kind of unsaid landmark or reference point is how far is it from Burj Khalifa, and we kind of use that as like a uncalled reference point, if you like. So I think that for a lot of people who perhaps come into Dubai for the first time, and again, going back to your previous question, you know, why people are coming to Dubai and why perhaps apartments versus townhouses, villas, it's a great opportunity for people to almost dabble with the idea of Dubai. Is it going to be for me? You know, do I bring my family over? Am I settled in? Do I go for downtown kind of city lifestyle, or do I go a bit further afield? Perhaps that's downtown in the kind of concrete jungle versus maybe on the marina or the palm, where it's perhaps a little bit more calming and tranquil. It really depends. Different strokes for different folks, I guess.
One of our biggest developers, or the biggest developer, I'd say, Emaar, they recently launched Oasis, didn't they?
They did indeed.
What happened with that, Rennie, in case people don't know? I was actually at the event opening where they had an Indian... Shah Khan. Where there was a lot of excited celebrity, or people wanting to see him. What happened, Rennie? Give us, if people don't know what happened, if they weren't in Dubai and they saw, because I think it made most of the newspapers or publications.
It did. So Emaar have come about with their own kind of lagoon concept. So the lagoon concepts have, for now, been very, very popular hit in Dubai. So you have District 1, who kind of really pioneered it and was the first project in Dubai to launch it, followed by Talal Gaf, which is by Majid Al Futtaim, and more recently Damat Lagoons. Now they've been a really big hit, but for the longest time there's been a lot of what I like to call Emaar alumni who would never consider buying with any other developer, but Emaar didn't necessarily have that sort of offering to the market, which is a bit more wow factor. So now they've kind of come about, launched it, teased people with the idea of it, and they did this, as you mentioned, this fantastic launch for a lucky few who got to meet Bollywood celebrity Sharland Khan, and the whole market went in, I don't know, hysterics, if you like. Everybody that I knew, if I didn't reach out to them, they were reaching out to me to just find out what is it, where is it, how do we get one. The problem is, if you blink, you could quite honestly miss it. I remember being on a plane traveling to London at the time that they were doing expression of interest, and the whole journey, 7 hours, could not have gone quicker, because it was just speaking to clients, trying to gather documents and get people geared up for it.
The joys of internet at 38,000 feet.
Yeah,
Rennie.
absolutely. Just as well as it became free the weekend before, so that was obviously a bit of a touch. But it's the whole market was keen and backing it. Yeah.
But so we're talking about, you know, a lot of sales happening in the off-plan market. But from you guys who are on the ground, if you wanted a villa in this, and you say if you'd blinked, you wouldn't have got one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people blinking that wasn't, from what I understand, it virtually impossible to get one.
Well, I think they had, how many villas was there? 200 and something?
I think it was about just over, yeah.
Okay, and they had 5,000 expressions of interest. So not, what's that's going to be? That's going to be 5% of the people who applied with an expression of interest actually got a property.
Okay.
So that, I mean, that's just
it's a difficult one to get then, Paul.
But yeah, I mean, look, they're obviously going to launch more, and you know, and it's Emaar's first foray into doing sort of a master community based around water. You know, traditionally they've done golf courses and lots of greenery. So you know, they've entered into this market that they know. You know, look, we're in the desert here, so if we've got nice lakes and lagoons to look at, you know, it's quite tranquil and people like it a lot.
And I suppose this is what we're just seeing with the market conditions. But if this was launched 5 years ago, it would have been easier to get, right? Because it's a bit further out.
Plan probably as well, right?
Different
payment plan.
It is. I mean, look, it's Emaar very much know where we are at in terms of the market, how much demand there is, and it really speaks to the perhaps people who are not quite in tune with the market and perhaps think that it's not quite as buoyant as it is. I mean, we're talking about this project being sold out, but it's not actually launched either. You know, we've got to remember, we're just in expression of interest stage. On the 22nd of July, they'll actually be collecting payments. So it's oversubscribed by 5,000 people, but it's not yet launched. I mean, that if that doesn't speak to the volume of how much demand there actually is here, nothing really will.
And that takes us nicely onto supply keeping up with demand. Is the supply keeping up with the demand? Do you have enough options for buyers at the moment?
I think that you've got to, I've said this before and I'll probably keep saying it, but let's very quickly just go back over this. So the population in 2005 was 1.2 million. The population now is 3.6 million. Just under 500,000 people have moved here since 2018. And if the current trend continues, which everybody expects it to, if you speak to the relocation companies, if you speak to the schools, if you speak to the government, we'll be looking at a population of 5 million by 2030, which is an uplift of 1.4 million. You're going to need a lot of property to fulfill what those people need, whether they're actually buying themselves or whether they're buying to rent out to somebody else. They're going to need a lot of property. So there's a very strong argument to say there's actually going to be undersupply. You know, they're building a lot, but they're going to need a lot.
Agreed.
I saw a publication released yesterday that Dubai's population surged by 50,000 in the last 6 months. That's a good number.
It is, right?
Any estimate on what would have been released in the last 6 months?
In terms of
properties released?
New launches.
Yeah.
New launches.
You wouldn't be at 50,000 for sure.
No.
You wouldn't be at half of that?
Well, you think about it, a new mega development, like villas, townhouses and apartments.
Like Oasis.
Yeah.
Like that's a massive development would be 10,000 units.
Yeah.
Now it sounds massive, but it's not a lot compared to 200,000 people moving here a year.
Yeah.
Which is what they expect it to be over the next, 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. So you're speaking to the developers day in, day out. I know that Showbill were in here in the office yesterday.
Yeah.
What are these developers saying? Is it still launch? You know, Rennie, what clients have you got coming? We've got this coming out. Paul, we've got this new kind of villa community. Do you get an understanding from the developers that they are going full force?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, there's probably an element of make hay while the sun shines as well. But I mean, for the most part, the developers are launching thick and fast. Whether that's a directive from kind of higher management or the powers that be, if you like, but maybe there is an argument for launch now because we do need that supply to meet the demand. But as far as speaking to at least a lot of the top tier developers, there's a lot going on.
These clients that you're seeing buying, are you finding that they're saying, guys, I want something that I can potentially move into. Guys, I want something that I can potentially get an ROI on. I'm going to holiday let it or long-term let it. I want something that maybe is going to go up in value in the next couple of years and I'm going to flip it and exit. What tends to be the kind of, I know, Paul, before we hit the record button in here, you were saying people have got to understand this is not an investor-driven market. And that's what I think we need to hit home to people, because it's genuinely, you've been here 20 plus years, you've seen it. People, should they be scared?
No, I mean, it's a complete mixed bag of the clients we're dealing with. And literally, I mean, somebody could want to buy off plan. I've had this conversation twice in the last couple of weeks, where one family from the UK, one family from Germany, and their kids are in primary school, and they've both said they don't want their kids going to high school in their own countries, so they want to buy off plan, a big apartment or a villa or a townhouse. They're looking to move here in 3 years when their kids, in that transitional period. So they're end users, but they're buying off plan, and then you get the people who want to buy off plan purely as investment. It's a whole mixture.
Do you find people, Rennie, are looking for resi? They're going out with a resi team. They're trying to look at something, go into it, and they want to find that perfect home. We know that in the resi sales area, they've also got limited amount of stock. So you can't, if I want a 5-bed in this location, I want it to be in good condition. I want it to have a certain size plot. Yeah. I want it to be vacant on transfer. A lot of buyers, I believe, are phoning the agent thinking, well, this is madness. Why can't you show me 5 or 6 or 10 options?
Then this is it. And
so were they then coming over to you to be exactly like, right, those guys can't help us. So what about if I maybe go into rented and I find something that I can have brand new delivered in the next 2, 3, 4, well, 2, 3, 4 years?
Yeah, that's we're seeing a lot of that. I was out with a gentleman from Sweden the other day, and it's the exact same thing. He's living in Dubai land at the moment. Ideally wants to buy something ready, looked around all the kind of villa communities, not found an option that actually makes sense. Either they are a bit dated, need a lot of work in terms of renovation, doesn't necessarily have the cash available outside of mustering together deposit and all the extra fees to renovate it. So he's like, well, I'm not getting the pick of the bunch. I'm buying something that's tired. I need it to be vacant on transfer and all the other kind of T's and C's that perhaps on the wish list for your typical residential buyer. But it was like, well, if I could buy something where it's brand new, it comes with a warranty, it's all shiny and everything else, but I can get it on a flexible payment terms. Now, it's actually not something that he thought of himself necessarily, but when I mentioned to him, like, how much rent are you paying? And are you on kind of COVID rental prices? When he said, he moved in quite early in 2020, he must have benefited from quite what we'd argue as kind of low rents for the time. And as we know, because of the rental index, you can only make small increments year on year. So that actually allowed him to look at investing or buying something that's off plan at a flexible sort of payment terms, but with view that once the property is ready in 3 years' time, he can actually get the one that he wants, but also benefit from what is arguably going to be a lower interest rate. So you can almost get the pick of the bunch, get the perfect balance of how much you outlay, leveraging it later with good interest rate. I mean, this almost sounds like a no-brainer.
I get it. Paul, we're going to finish on this.
Can I just say one thing which I'd like to finish on? Because it's a question we get all the time, and I would just like to not address it, but this is just my opinion. So high-end property, ultra luxury in Dubai now is around 5,000 to 10,000 dirhams a square foot. Whether that's on the Palm particularly, or I'd say downtown, they're probably the two main areas where you're going to get that sort of property. Now, when you look at any other major city, so whether it's London, Paris, Hong Kong, Singapore, so look, going by today's exchange rate, you're looking at 5,000 to 10,000 dirhams a square foot, which people say, that's expensive, but that's 1,000 to 2,000 pounds per square foot. Now, central London is 3,000 pounds per square foot. Right. So you're talking 13,000 to 15,000 dirhams a square foot. So when you could buy, for instance, on the Palm for 10,000 dirhams a square foot, which does sound expensive, that could be Orla by Omniat, that could be Royal Atlantis, it's still significantly cheaper than a normal apartment in London, which with no bells and whistles, against buying in one of the most iconic addresses in the world to a super luxury development development.
Yeah.
So people can't say it's really, really expensive, because you do the comparisons against any other major city in the world, it's still less.
So where are people comparing then to, Paul?
Well,
When they say it's too expensive, because I've just bought in London.
they're comparing it to they're comparing it to the last 5 years, or they're comparing it to during COVID.
Yeah.
You know, and those prices weren't real prices.
You cannot find the amenity. You know, I'm going into a smelly, damp hallway in London with no gym, no security.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's in a nice area, but it's definitely nothing like you'd be walking into some of the basic Emaar would still be
Absolutely.
far higher than £2,500 a square foot in London.
And the other side of looking at that is, should you ever look to exit on that property, there's also the capital gains tax that you pay on it, right?
Stamp duty.
Stamp duty is horrendous.
Yeah.
And then, look, this is not to downplay perhaps any other place in the world, but maybe looking at what actually Dubai is offering you is, whilst you are in these maybe affluent areas in London, you have a hell of a place, you probably don't feel that comfortable walking around with a nice watch on.
No, for sure. I think there's a lot of reasons. But safety is definitely one of them. Paul, next 6 months, we're going into August, September, October. If I was looking to buy, from your experience, working here for a long time, am I going into a good time to buy?
Yes, I would actually. You know,
I knew you were gonna say
I hope
that.
I don't regret saying this, but I would buy sooner rather than later, because, and I think it's a collective opinion, there's a huge sleeping giant of a property market, which is the crypto market, and we're seeing more and more crypto buyers over the last 3 months, and we believe that will continue and will become quite a significant market again come September onwards.
Crypto capital of the world.
Crypto capital of the
That's
world,
it.
for sure.
Yep.
Rennie, thanks ever so much for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you for having
Paul,
me.
thank you.
Thank you very much, Luke.